Yeah, so Inglewood has an interesting history. You know what I mean? And we've been trying to piece it together uh, just between people that lived it, to try and get it as authentic as it can be. And it usually starts with when black folks moved to Inglewood, like pretty much from the east side, moving west to Inglewood from the east side. And that comes with, who lived here before we did. You know what I'm saying? And you can see pretty much a white student body with mid 70s yearbooks. You know what I'm saying? And then it sprinkles and then it changes by the 80s from what I've seen, right? But your family lived here, and were they already property owners or?
My mom and dad moved to Inglewood. Their first place in Inglewood was off of, actually like Inglewood Ave and 120th when, my dad came back from Vietnam. They rented an apartment in Inglewood. And part of the problem with living on that side of town was right under the flight path of the airplanes. And my dad suffered from, I guess, what is that? Post-traumatic.
Oh yeah, PTSD, yeah.
Stuff. Yeah. And, he would literally push my mother out of bed. This is before I'm born. This is my mom told me, of course, that he would push her out of bed and flip the mattress on top of her when the airplanes would fly over. So they were there a couple of months, and that never changed. And then she actually found a realtor in Inglewood that serviced Inglewood. I remember meeting her because she was friends with the family years later, and they bought the house that we still own, the family still owns, in North Inglewood, kind of over in Fairview Heights. So that was 1973. My sister was 1 year old, and then I was born a year later, and that's the property that we still own today.
So they weren't interested in leaving when everybody else started leaving, or they benefited from everybody leaving?
My mom was heavily invested into Inglewood Unified School District. She was an instructional aide. And, as you get older, like instructional aides really didn't make a lot of money. So she really was invested in the community, and she was just a part of the community and a part of the change, and kind of just rolled with it. I never really, saw myself as being, different. The only difference that I saw in myself that I had two parents in the household. A lot of my friends didn't have fathers there. It necessarily wasn't a color thing. I think for me, when I realized that there was a difference between me and a friend wasn't until the fourth grade, which would have been, how old were we in the fourth grade? I can't even remember. Probably like 1984. So like 10 years old, I realized like, okay, yeah, we are a little different. And it's kind of a funny story because I had a friend of mine that went to a karate school, and he told me about his karate school. And I was like, yo, I want to go to your karate school. I'm going to tell my mom. And he said he would ask his dad, and we're all excited. And then he went home and told his dad, like, hey, Joey wants to go to the karate school. And he was like, well, I don't think that'd be a good idea. And he's like, why? My friend wants to go. And he explained to him that it was a black karate federation.
Oh,
that it was.
Yeah.
And he
VFK,
and he
yeah.
came back. Yeah, and he came back and told me, and I was like, I don't understand. I don't get it. And then that's when I realized there was like a difference. And it was just like, oh, okay. But, we still were friends. We're still friends to this day, but it was a difference. It was like, okay, things are different then. Okay. But it wasn't like frowned upon, but I kind of understood it like, oh, okay. It's a people that, just have a karate school together, and I just can't go. I didn't look at it as nothing else.
That's funny, because that's the same school that or is affiliated with the teacher of Wesley Snipes too. So that's interesting. that you actually have a direct history with that. That's funny.
Yeah, no, it was pretty interesting. And then of course, my parent explained it to me in the best way, and his explained it to them, and we were just like, whatever. We still friends, and he showed me karate and this and that, and it just kind of went from there,
So, like a lot of white families was leaving for this from this boogeyman that was supposed to be coming from from Watts and Compton, and you know what I mean, like that was the foundation of white flight, which is this fear that black children would corrupt white children, you know what I'm saying, and ruin the neighborhood, bring crime, bring teenage pregnancy, bring, you know what I'm saying, corruption to like the community's culture. So your family didn't have these problems, and or didn't have this view, obviously, because they stayed, and you didn't feel.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's cool. No, that's good. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. One thing I noticed, like there were 2 or 3 white families that lived on my street. My neighborhood was were houses. Some parts of Inglewood there were more apartments than others. So my street was all houses, and I did notice like people were leaving that were of non-color, like white people left. It was whatever, but I didn't know. I didn't know what was going on or like why. I just thought it was like, oh, they're moving, But as you get older and you look back at it, it was kind of weird because I noticed that I would be cool going to play over there, but then my neighbors across the street really wasn't playing over there. And then when I would try to be like, well, I'm gonna go play at such and such, come down here, it was like, oh, my parents said I can't go down there. Us as kids thinking, oh, maybe it's too far, but really it was because of their ignorant views. They were instilling those or putting that in their children's mind of you can't play with them. Like it's so weird to me now that I look back at it. It was the parents that just had these ignorant ways and just wasn't love for everyone, and people did move away. It was pretty interesting.
Wow. Yeah.
So it was good. It was challenging for me at times, but I mean, it was what it was. I mean, I was one of the few white kids on the football team in high school, on the flag football team. There was just different nationalities, but I just felt like I was one of the guys,
So you didn't feel like you succumbed to any like inferiority complex or anything being like a minority in these situations. It just was life as you knew it.
At a younger age, no. As I got older and started to date females, as they say, outside of your race, you felt the, I won't necessarily say the pressure, but you felt the looks from maybe white people, Latino people, or African Americans or whatever. And it was just like, and I understood it because at that time it was, early high school years and stuff like that, where you go out to the movies on a date and stuff. And you already have in your mind, oh, I know what they're thinking. Like, I'm one of those white guys. You know what I'm saying? It's pretty interesting. I literally had more altercations about me dating women of color than actually from the neighborhood I was from.
Wow.
And it was challenging at times, but I knew what came with it, because you can't be mad at someone for wanting to protect their own and thinking of a certain mentality or a class of person, because they dealt with that the majority of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, okay, they don't know me. They're judging me off of someone else, and it's kind of like a pass. But if I speak to them and explain to them and then they don't understand, then I feel like they have a personal problem with me instead of just a look. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that was just like the biggest thing when it came down to stuff. I remember, we were probably like, I was always the youngest of the crew. And, we had these white neighbors that lived down the hill from our house, man. It was so funny that we didn't know like what they were saying to us. And one of the guys called me a dirty white boy. And I just thought it was funny. Like, oh, this guy called me a dirty white boy. Like, we laughed about it, and we went home and told our parents, and they explained, like, yo, that's a racial term for white people that hangs with blacks. Stay away from them. They're not no good and stuff like that. It was just like, it was crazy to us. We were kids playing, and we didn't know. Mm-hmm. But there were, they eventually moved out of the neighborhood, and it was pretty intense.
So some of these That's interesting that some of these people hung on a little longer than others, obviously, and you had some contact with them. Like, that's, wow. I mean, because I'm wondering, when was the forum built? And, you know, obviously Inglewood had its own hospitals, and there's a lot of infrastructure in place, right? So when was the forum built? Do you know offhand?
I want to say 60 something.
Okay, so it is a little older. I just was wondering, how did that work with, you know, like with white flight? It's like they were leaving a lot behind, you know what I'm saying, for this, from this fear and or this improvement in life, you know what I mean? I just was wondering, because the fact that the Lakers played in Inglewood is a very interesting point in history, you know what I'm saying, that it was fully invested. It was a Cadillac dealer, I remember, on Lake La Brea. It was a Regal dealer.
My mom, it's funny. My mom actually got a Cadillac from that Cadillac dealer that was right there on La Brea in Florence.
Yep, that's it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, and then they had the department stores, and I mean, it was obviously a thriving community at one point, and then it changed complexion. You know what I'm saying? And
I personally think, like, what happened, and you know, I'll be vulnerable in the whole conversation with sharing like certain family members and stuff like that, and I'm not ashamed of it because it doesn't represent my views. It just represents their ignorance and everything. So I think what happened was the people that were these business owners and working there, it was fine to take your money, but I'm better than you, the one on this next door to you. So it was like, it was a class thing. Like, for example, my mother's oldest brother lived in Hawthorne probably until about 1984, 85, and he worked for Caltrans. And his best friend was a black guy. And I remember moving him and his best friend helping move them to Canyon Country. That's up like towards Magic Mountain area or whatever. It was before anybody moved there, before it was a desirable location. It was super affordable, stuff like that. And then my uncle, my cousin's mom, they moved there, and then I would go spend the summertime there. At a younger age, it was incredible. I remember going into the 9th grade, and I went to spend the summer up there, and my cousins had made like some remarks like, how do you live down there with those people? And I was like, well, what do you mean those people? And he was like, well, you know, we're like blacks and Mexicans. I was like, I don't get it. I was like, oh, you used to live down here too. And he was like, oh, well, we don't go down there anymore. And that was the last time I spent the summer up there. I called my mom. I was like, yo, you got to come get me. She's like, what's wrong? Did somebody do something to you? And that literally was the last summer that I spent with that part of my family because of the views. And I was old enough to understand, like, yo, this shit's not right. And it blew me away. Like, it just didn't make any sense. But it's because they were moved away, and it's what their parents taught them.
So your family, your relations with your families are still divided, you're saying?
It's not necessarily divided, but I've just learned how to deal with it and just to let love oversee their ignorance, because I may be the one to correct it, or I might be the one to show them that their view on something is not good. I know it's a lot better than what it was. 4 months ago, we just celebrated my mother's 98th birthday, and, you know, my entire family went, and my wife is Afro-Cuban. So there's a diverse community within there, as well as my sister's children are biracial. And it was all love, and it was fun, and it was good and everything, and it just seemed like nothing was wrong. Hell, my grandmother's nurse is African-American. So it's like, you know, I don't know if the views have necessarily changed, or they've given into it, or they suppressed the feelings, but that's just what I dealt with growing up. And I'm really trying to rekindle the relationship with like my cousins and stuff to see if the views have changed and stuff like that. I think, you know, as time has gone along, I think they should have corrected it, or, you know, they may just deal with it in society. But I'm very interested to know and try to fix the relationship and see where it's at and see if I can help shed any type of light on the ignorance.
So do you think if you would have moved with them to wherever they had moved to, like, and kind of made the same moves, that would have impacted your worldview?
I definitely believe so, because I share with people all the time. If I was not born and raised in Inglewood and I moved out or whatever, I would be a different person. And what I share with people all the time, life is a culture, not a color. I am a part of the culture. I'm living proof that I am 100% Inglewood, but I have white skin. So it's like, I would think, yes, I would be affected, and the mindset would be different until I can get out there and venture off on my own and learn on my own again, because you're in your parents' house, you kind of go by what they teach you. And if that's all you see, then that's all you know.
So you're saying, aside from location, the teachings of the parents impacted the worldview of, like, these relatives as well. It was parental as well as social.
Yeah, I believe so, because it's even like, it goes back to, let's just use your grandmother, for example. Your grandma teaches you that the Bible is what to follow. And then later on in life, say you find out, oh, maybe the Bible is not it, but people are afraid to admit that their grandma is wrong. They love her. She may be deceased. She may still be here. People are afraid to admit, like, what their parent has taught them is wrong, what their relatives have taught them there is wrong. But I mean, everyone makes the mistake. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, it's a teachable moment where you can question and build together and say, hey, I just kind of was reading something and found this out. Like, are you aware of this? And, you can't do it in an arrogant manner because it's your elder, but, it just has to be done.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, and I think, like, it's a tough battle, but I kind of feel like a responsibility as far as, like, my blood family is concerned, to really lead by example, because I stand on love. And if I stand on love like I want to, I have to reach out. I have to go to the birthday parties. I have to interact with the cousins and stuff like that, just to see where it's at. And I think I'm at a point in my life where I can do it, and maybe we can go fishing together and kind of just go from there, and not necessarily bring up the past, but share what made me be uncomfortable and see where it's at now to this day.
Yeah, because I find it interesting that there was this fear of this group that was coming to the neighborhood, and from what I'm hearing, you found love and community. You know what I'm saying? Like, so here come the people that were billed as the boogie people, like these, the boogeyman is coming, and your family decided to stay and teach you a certain code, a certain ethic, and you're able to find, and thrive in a city, in a community that all these others that practice white flight feared. That's so interesting, man. That's like
the background of my dad. My dad is from a small town in Pennsylvania called Elwood City, so he grew up around black people. It was black people in his town. My mother is born and raised in the South Bay. When she was born into the Harbor City projects that are not there no more. Like, I still have her. She went to North High in Torrance, so I have her yearbook, and there are a few, Latinos, Asians, African Americans in her yearbook. So it was kind of already like there. I think California was a little bit different in the sense of than it was integrated in the South. I don't know. I'm not from the South. I haven't lived there, but I have friends that came from there. But California was more or less like people trying to build wealth and better areas and stuff like that. And I think maybe the people that left were afraid that their spots were going to be taken, or the money was going to be gone, or whatever the situation is. I don't know. We stayed. I'm glad. I wouldn't change it for the world. There were a lot of challenges. There were a lot of questions that needed to be answered. It was a whole lot of stuff. I remember vividly playing football at Inglewood High School from the 11th to the 12th grade year. We got a new coach that came in from somewhere else, and he jokingly said to me, I'm going to put you with the toughest guy and see what you can do. And, he put the biggest guy on me. I did pretty good. Basically the dude kicked my ass, but I held my own. He was twice my size, Division I, future player. And the coach was like, cause where I come from, white boys can't play football. And I did very well against the guy. And I threw the football at the coach and said, welcome to Inglewood. And we all laughed about it. And then he made me run. It was just like a no-win situation. It was just hilarious. And then eventually I was a captain, for 1 or 2 games or whatever. I mean, I was a pretty decent player.
So you had your own Remember the Titans moment. That's very interesting.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
so one person. It wasn't a whole team. It was one person.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was only one white guy on the team.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like there was nowhere else to go with this story but your story. That's hilarious.
It's just me. Yeah, so. But yeah, it was pretty funny. It was pretty cool though. But I mean, it all worked out and we were all unified and stuck together, and it was a teachable and a learning moment. I knew he didn't mean how someone would have taken it nowadays, and he would have lost his damn job. But I knew what he was saying back then. I understood,
Yeah, because you hear about each other. Yeah, you hear about coaches discriminating in whatever fashions to blackball players. So it's interesting that you had a little reverse of discrimination taking place, for lack of a better term.
Funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how I think my background in the music industry was my first job was radio promotions. I took a job with a record label, and no one wanted the radio promotions job because your job was to solicit the program director to play the music. I had relationships with people, but no one really knew my background and what type of music I was going to present. So I'm like, okay, let me use my skin to my advantage against the system. So I said, I'll take the job. They're going to see a white guy coming. They're going to take the meeting, but I had such a force behind me from the neighborhood that if they make me a promise, they have to keep it out of fear of the guys that back me up. So I would take the most hardcore hip hop and they would get into the meeting and hear it and be like, God, we told this dude we'll take the meeting, we'll play his records, and they didn't have a choice but to do it. And that's how I thrived in music. It was just like I used it to the advantage of the culture. And I understood. It was very interesting. It all goes back to we had a teacher named Miss Johnson at Inglewood High School that was an ethnic literature teacher. And in the 12th grade, I took ethnic literature. I was the only white kid in the class. She kind of looked like, why do you want to take this class? I was like, I'm interested, And by the time the end of the year, she wrote a little thing in my yearbook. I wish I had it in front of me or I kind of remember, but basically she said, use what you have to your advantage for your neighborhood and your community and where you learn love and stuff like that. She saw it and that always stuck with me.
So have you actually, aside from that example, do you see two worlds? Like if you present yourself in a certain way, are you whisked away into like a whitey wonderland, or is it's just a regular life like you imagine everybody's experiences, or is there some privilege that you've noticed that
there's definitely privilege that I noticed because like say getting stopped by law enforcement. I'll give you an example. We did a tour where we drove our own car on tour. It was me, a Puerto Rican kid, Afro-American kid, and a Latino guy. And we would take turns driving, and we were different states all across the United States of America. And our truck was wrapped, and it was a hip hop artist on the side of the truck, African American hip hop artist. And we pulled into one gas station, and my friend that was black went out to get gas, and they refused to serve him and said it was closed. We're in like I want to say we're in Mississippi going somewhere or whatever. And we're like, dang, that's weird. This other dude just got gas. So we sit there, we laughed about it. They're like, man, you got to get out and get gas. I was like, what you mean? They ain't going to give me no gas neither if it's closed. So we left, ended up coming back to the same gas station. I walk up to the window and the dude sold us gas. And it made me feel uncomfortable, but cool at the same time that I could use it to the advantage of my friends.
Yeah, I understand.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, it's weird. Even like, we got stopped on the highway. Like if I got pulled over for speeding, I would get a warning, but the person of color got a ticket. And it was just like living, like my friends would be like, see, that's bullshit. They let you slide because you're white. And I'd be like, no, man, that ain't true. But it really was the truth of why it was happening. We're like actually living this on the road. And this is 2001, 2002. Like it's been the new millennium. So it was a trip, man. It was definitely different, man. It's just one of those things.
So have you ever felt, peer pressure from, like to fit in, or is it always just been more or less an accepting situation? I'm talking about like throughout school in particular. Was there pressure to be something that you weren't?
No, I never necessarily felt the pressure to be something that I wasn't, but like transitioning from elementary school where I knew everyone and in my neighborhoods going into middle school where there was, people from 3 or 4 other elementaries. I knew that I kind of had to establish myself from the beginning because they didn't know who I was or what I was about or something like that. So I didn't want to present myself and be rejected because it was such a tough neighborhood and it's, the white guy. You know what I'm saying? I was very conscious of it. And it wasn't like a negative thing. I just understood it because I know what like a lot of my friends had been through and the type of negative things that had been said and done to them by, other white people. So it was just like one of those things that I was very conscious of. And it wasn't necessarily like a bad way. It just prepared me for society.
So would you have these talks with like your moms or your pops, or it was just something that you had to navigate?
I had conversations like, my mom would tell me like, well, you stand out like a sore thumb. And I never understood that term until later on in life. It was just like she says, you're the youngest and they're going to blame you. And, I understood that part. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm the youngest. So I'm going to get blamed. And then it was like, well, you got to understand that people view this stuff as different. I'm like, damn, what is she talking about? And then eventually you realize it,
Okay, yeah.
Even I noticed like, one time we got pulled over by the police and, there were some cars being broken into in the neighborhood or whatever. And they separated all of us and they wanted to hear my story and who was this? And I was just like, we're just dropping our friend off. Like, well, why? Your friend doesn't belong here. And I'm like, he lives down the street, but I'm not picking up on the racial part of it. I'm just like, man, the dude lives right down the street. It was crazy. But after a while, you kind of feel it and then you understand it. And then it pisses you off because then you can't be mad at other people that view you that way that don't know you, that are just looking at a color. It's a tough one.
Yeah, that sticking out like a sore thumb reminded me of this cat. I used to cut his hair, him and his brother's hair, some time ago, right? And then he was shorter then. I mean, still a tall young man, but he was shorter. But by the time I saw him again, after a certain break of not cutting his hair, he had stretched up to be like 6'6", 6'7", or whatever, and despite his father's efforts, right, to keep him out of nonsense, this dude started trying to gangbang, and it's like, yo, like you can't do crime, like you're way too tall, like it's like, dude,
exactly.
There's nothing you can do regarding crime, like just play basketball and go to school like your father told you to. What are you doing?
Exactly, and that's the prime example of the same thing, and that's just. It took me a while to get it, but I finally cut on. Like,
so you avoided banging and whatnot as well?
As best as I could, but how many white guys were at Inglewood? And you get labeled and you get tired of being accused of just being friends with somebody. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, where are you from? Like, oh, I live in Inglewood. Oh, you da-da-da. And you're like, oh, well, you know some. Yeah, those are my friends. And then it becomes frustrating. So definitely affiliated. So it was like a a double whammy, like, oh, white boy from Inglewood and he hang with the Bloods. Like, no, like, you guys are getting it all wrong. Like, but, I mean, it just, after a while, it was just like, what's up? What's happening? And like, okay, yeah, what do you want to do? So it was pretty interesting. And it was funny because I dated this young sister in Harbor City. I was 18, 19 years old. I was actually 18. I was after my senior year in high school. And in order to get to Harbor City, you would drive through Torrance. Mm-hmm. And anyone that's from Southern California knows that Torrance is notorious for being the most racist place in Southern California. I think their first black firefighter was just like 10, 15 years ago.
Damn.
And I got pulled over by Torrance PD. They asked me where I was going. I was like, oh, I'm going to drop my girlfriend off. And they're like, can you get out of the car? And I'm like, for what? I had to smarten off with the cops because I saw what my friends went through. She's like, just listen. So I got out the car. He says, well, you know why I stopped you? I said, I have no idea. They're like, oh, you got a burnt out tail light. I went to the back of the car and looked. I don't have a burnt out tail light. I said, I don't have a burnt out tail light. Am I free to go? And the cop was like, well, this is what I really want to ask you. And I'm like, what's up? He was like, what corner did you pick that girl up off of?
Oh, wow.
And let me tell you, dude, that point in my life, I was so furious and so hot and wanted to do something so much about it. I felt like, oh man, it was a life changer. I was like, this racist bastard. And I was just like, I can't even imagine what my friends go through and that's being dealt with. And oh man, I was so pissed. I just left. I didn't even ask him, could I leave? I got in the car and I just left. And I cried. I was mad. She was like, what's wrong? I didn't want to tell her what was said and what happened. It just, it was a game changer. And that just made me feel like, you racist pig. It just, oh man. And oh my God, it was something that was crazy. And that was 1993, 92, 93.
Yeah, I felt similar when Red came to pick me up and from like a school dance, I think I was like in the 9th grade, man, and somebody was out there fighting or something or threatening to fight, and the school police was trying to tell people to move along, and I'm like, yeah, my brother was like, yo, it's like we about to move, like, but we were kind of looking at the activities, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And this little dude's like, no, like move now, like, trying to mouse this, this big man, like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then my brother's like, yo, like, chill out, man. And then he tries to like hit him with the club, like move, like, And my brother like grabs the club and tells the police like, yo, come get this little, like, basically a rent-a-cop type dude. Like, that's when they first introduced that. And then the PD came, the real PD, and circled my brother and like pushed him down. And I'm like, yo, what the, and he's telling me to like get his chain and his glasses or something. And I go to get that, and then the police grab me up like and shove me, and they like, like move it along or whatever, just straight police business, you know what I'm saying? And thankfully, Mustafa was there, and he's like, man, come on, man, like he can be all right, like, you know what I'm saying? But that was my first introduction to that violence. Police like, it's like, yo, this is not a game, like, and then you talking about children after a school dance, like this is not. We were on a corner,
At 88, 89, we 13, 14 years old. Your brother being responsible to come pick you up and doing the right thing, and then look how he's treated. And it's crazy.
Yeah. And then charge them with all things resisting arrest. Resisting arrest to what? Like,
what? He didn't do anything wrong. And then all of a sudden, I'm sure, it got dropped. It's a tough one, man. I think, a thing that I'm big on now in the community that I was raised in, I still live there, is the community between civilian and police. I think the biggest disconnection is if you're an Inglewood police officer, you cannot live in the city, which I think is half-ass backwards. I think you should live in the city that you police.
Yeah.
But they say it's, some threats, some gangs, some this or that. So whenever we have like our district number 2 picnics that, Alex Padilla throws that I think are phenomenal, the mayor comes out, the police come out, I make it a point to walk up to the police, stick my hand out, introduce by my full government name, tell them where I live, to build it, and the reaction on their face is priceless. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, you police my community, right? And they're like, yes, well, this is where I live, and I want you to know who I am. I'm around here, so I'm just trying to introduce myself to you. And some of them are cool with it. Some of them are more or less like uncomfortable with it. But the biggest problem is these guys are 21, 22, 23, 24, fresh out of the academy. Most of them are white, and they're like,
oh, they're still mostly white. That's very interesting.
Yes. I mean, it's a lot better, but it's not where it needs to be because if one struggles and one suffers, we all suffer. That's just the bottom line. The Inglewood police chief is still white.
So did your mother ever share like the neighborhood changing, like, or that was a non-issue because it was a non-issue? She just kept working, kept living. You know what I'm saying? Or was it?
There was nothing ever shared because it was a non-issue for us because it was 73. So I think the community was a little bit more integrated. So I don't think they were there early enough to.
Oh, I see, to catch that full,
yeah, to catch all.
Because I always wonder what that's like. You know what I'm saying? And to have a neighborhood look a certain way and then it just trickles and changes completely. That's interesting.
Well, it's happening now.
I've heard.
Yeah, so gentrification is happening in Inglewood.
He said, come home if I want to see that. It's happening right now.
Yeah, it's like, you're welcome to it if you can afford it. Everyone is being priced out. Like, it's insane. And I get a kick out of it, right? My wife is Afro-Cuban. We're at the park playing with our kids. We see another mixed couple in the park. They all have on Uggs. We're laughing at it like, a whole family with Uggs on. The wife is black, the husband is white, and they start walking our way, and I tell Ashley, I say, watch, they're gonna ask like, something or whatever, and they're gonna feel comfortable because we're a mixed couple or whatever you want to call it. So the lady walks over to us and she goes, oh, how long have you been in the neighborhood? So I said, oh, since 1974. She was like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm born and raised here. I was like, yeah, my wife's from Compton, and then her husband comes over and saves her. He was like, honey, just stop. He was like, I'm gonna let you know I'm a gentrifier, I'm a businessman, I'm trying to get some of this money. Like, it is what it is. And I totally respect that. Like, if that's what you're on, be upfront about it. It just was the lady felt so bad, and just the egg was on her face. It was so funny to me. I was just like, oh, here we go. But it's just like how everything is changing, and they think this neighborhood, like, oh my God, this place, and it's so awesome, and yeah, it's been awesome. It's the same place. Still fabulous people, fabulous homes. You know what I'm saying? It's just on their radar now, their quote unquote radar.
Oh yeah, the proximity to things is killer. The beach, the LAX. It's
priceless, man. It's priceless. It's happening in Compton now too.
Oh, it's happening state to state. Yeah, it's official. It's going. Yeah.
So I think what's happening is it's going to go all the way to what we call the east side, east of the 110. I have a partnership with a printing company in Oakland, and Oakland is 100% gentrified except for East Oakland. Wow. Because in East Oakland, there are a lot of black homeowners. A friend of mine, her parents own 2 apartment buildings and a house. Like, they're not selling out or selling their property. They're staying and they're keeping and they're standing what they're standing on. So they can reap the benefit of this stuff that's going on.
Yeah, I think that was, poverty played a role in that, where we just weren't invested the way that we should have been. Because, I mean, if you're invested, then it takes that eminent domain. You feel me? To really shift you. So I think that was a problem with a lot of people we grew up with. Is just like, maybe not so much on your side, but for sure on my side, we was renters. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's even to the point to where I think back to the school system. It's all in the school system. Like, I never remember being taught how to do taxes in school. I never was taught about credit in school. It seems like that's all a part of the system and society's plan to undereducate so we can come back and take this at any time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
and it's a tough one to try to figure out because everything can't be the world against the hood. But that's what it feels like at times.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. Like as an outsider, let's just briefly talk about like you're like the concept, the belief is that white people tap into a network, consciously or subconsciously, and it would appear that you haven't tapped into the network because of your exposure, your experiences, right? But this world is still set up. This system still sets you up for certain advantages. So is there ever a time where you feel like, I mean, obviously before your marriage, you know what I'm saying, that, damn, I need to go on the other side and try and access this white privilege everybody's talking about, like fully access it. You know what I'm saying? Well, whatever that would mean, because it's only mythical, it's only theoretical from those of us that's outside of it.
Right. The best thing that I could share with you to try to answer that question is from my experience. And remember, we're in the 12th grade and we all had a college counselor and everyone was going to college and everybody was getting grants and scholarships and free money to go to school. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of my friends assumed that I didn't need those things because my family was white and they had money. No, we didn't have money like that. And when I went to try to get a grant, a scholarship, or anything, there was literally nothing available for me because I was a white guy. and I felt the effect like, damn, like, okay. I mean, I'd like to try to go to school, but it's very expensive. Even though I wasn't big on college, but I want to try, But it was just like, I felt the thing like, well, this white thing is not what everyone thinks it is because of privilege. And it was a trip. It was like, I got it, but I didn't experience it like that,
Yeah.
It was a class situation. And I think for me, I think times, I do believe that there's still a huge problem with, racism. But I think the bigger thing and the bigger shift, at least in my mind, was with Hurricane Katrina. When Hurricane Katrina hit, white people, black people, Asian people, all colors died. But one thing that they had in common, they all were poor. Mm. And I think that was a big shift in society to view from race to class, according to your tax rate.
Yeah, that's totaled a lot, and I thought that what was special was when we are the 99% was being pushed. I think that covers exactly what you're saying, that if we moved as a working class, then we can produce justice probably like never before. I definitely agree with that. I just don't think that there's enough people willing to shed whatever it is to be white.
Sacrifice, yeah.
Yeah, whatever that is, because that ultimately there's a fallback on whiteness. It's like, okay, I'm with you, I'm pro, I don't like to sound like that, but I'm not willing to give up.
They can tap out at any time.
Exactly. And
yeah.
So the we are the 99% definitely to me is a truth. And what you're saying should be true, but there's argument against it. You see what I'm saying? I'm not going to get into that argument with you, but there's definitely there's been a lot of activism where people have felt that those activists have come in, although well-intentioned, they have derailed the conversation from white supremacy racism to one of class, which, has its own arguments. You see what I'm saying? As to why that shouldn't deviate from that. But like I said, if it was to be embraced like we are the 99%, and we actually figure out a way to move what appears to be an unmovable force with this 1%, then we definitely need that. But it seems as though white people as a collective can't get over their own whiteness. You see what I'm saying? Because you've seen it on the other side. Like even your life is a testament that people, although they may not have personally known white people before knowing you, that there was an acceptance. Like, you know what I'm saying? At least that's what I'm hearing. It wasn't like you got beat up every day going to school just because you was white or bullied or, you see what I'm saying? So there was obviously an acceptance component that didn't take much from you. I don't think you traded in who you are. I think you were able to still evolve as a person, you know, within the context of like a colorblind system, more or less. If people valued you for whatever you brought to the table, right? So.
Right. I know, let me stop you right there.
Yeah,
I know one thing that was tougher for me was sports and getting picked in sports, because it was like, oh, the white boy might not be good. And I was just as good as everyone else, if not better than some. But that was one of the things that I struggled with. I'm like, damn, they're not picking me because they don't think I can play. Or they're not picking me because, oh, I'm the only white guy. So there was some insecurity there in that area, but it wasn't enough to feel like whatever. It was a force behind me to push, to do better, to be the best, to work the hardest, to do all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't really have a negative effect on me, or at least I didn't feel like it did, you know? And I think with what you're saying about the 99%, I think everyone's situation is different as far as like supporting and doing things. And I think you have some that come from different areas and think they want to be a part of something, but then when the going gets tough, they run back up to their suburban home.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But for myself, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. That's just me. I'm standing what I stand on, and it's love. And I was taught this deep amount of love in the urban community by African Americans, by the Latino, all the unity and all the great things that I've learned and been blessed to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just what I stand on, because it's just such a loving people and culture and community. It's just something I wouldn't trade in for the world.
So when you're in all white environments, are there moments to speak about these type of concepts, or is it just a whole different, you know, context to conversations? Like, because the belief is that white people sit around and talk about how to make money when they're, you know, more or less when they're sharing downtime. You know what I'm saying? Do you find yourself in conversations about race with white people, just in general, in all white environments, if you ever find yourself in those?
I think what happens for me, like, you know, I drive Uber full time. That's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been in some areas with some, what you would consider like wealthy white people. Okay, I've been in Beverly Hills before, and I pick someone up and I speak to the person and say, hey, you know, how you doing? And the first thing that they say is, oh my God, like, where are you from?
Mm.
And I was like, oh, I'm from Inglewood. And they're like, well, where's the Southern accent from? And you know, it gets irritating, but I'm like, no, you know,
what is a Southern accent? What is that? Is that code word for something? What are they?
I think it sounds like if I was a person of color, I would sound normal. Because I'm white and I sound like this.
That is Southern. That's interesting. That's funny.
Yeah. So it's just like, so the first start is like, oh, you live in Inglewood. Well, when did you move there? Oh, I'm born and raised there. Oh, really? They say, oh, really? And I'm like, yes. And then the conversation changes. It's not the same anymore. I've noticed that. And then you got some people that open up and they be like, oh my God, it's such a great place. You're lucky to be there. And I know the city's been awesome for years, and people, you know, are now moving in. How do you feel about it? There's open dialogue about it.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I was Ubering in Orange County, which is predominantly like a white neighborhood. And to be honest with you, until about 7 months ago, I didn't know what the term white flight meant. I'm Ubering. It's a young lady, African-American young lady. She's in the car. She's like, hey, you know, I was reading on your profile, on your Uber profile, that you're from Inglewood. And I was like, yes. And she was like, what the hell's wrong with you? Your parents didn't hear a white flight? And I was like, what is that? She was like, hell, my family even moved out of there. I'm like, what? And I started laughing. She was like, yeah, when all the white people moved out.
Wow.
So I'm cracking up laughing. I'm just like, oh man, this is too much. But she was really cool. We laughed about it. she says how she misses the neighborhood and she feels like she missed a part of culture with growing up in Orange County with predominantly white people, and she lacks certain social skills because you think you grow up one way and this is it, and then you go into the real world and it's very diverse and different cultures, and it's just like you're shell shocked because you think this is it.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, you have the advantage of growing up in the inner city where it's very diverse and basically a gumbo pot of everybody from different types of background, and it prepares you for the real world.
I mean, but the real world, unfortunately, for some of these white people are private schools all the way through graduate school and then private companies, and it's all white spaces.
Yeah,
so,
true.
I mean, they still are deprived of diversity. I understand that, but, you know, they would rather see, you know, non-white people performing on stages at a safe distance with security and police. You feel me? Like, so that's their experience versus actually benefiting from a cultural exchange. So ultimately, your upbringing brought you, it sounds like, into a space where you may not even be invited into, you know what I'm saying, the Illuminati meetings or anything. You know what I'm saying? Like you sound like you're.
Hey, look, I only could fake it for so long, and then it just comes out. It's just I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't respect it. I don't want no parts of it because it's phony. It's just, there's just some things there that I believe in. I share this with people a lot of times that I feel like that understand, are woke and conscious, that I think the biggest insecurity of most white people are they're not the original person and they're insecure about it. So they want to dominate in these worldly ways instead of learning from God's people, which are people of color, and the first man to walk the face of the earth, and try to rule with fear and force instead of learning love and compassion and all these great things that are here to offer that I've learned growing up in this community. It's like, it's so crazy to me is that if you don't see love in someone that has been through what blacks have been through in America, and they're still here and they're still loving and they're still caring and they're still thriving, like, you don't know what God is. You don't know what it is. That's just wholeheartedly what I believe. Because for a group of people to be put through what they've been put through and still be resilient and still be a smile on their face and fighting and pushing through it, it's just like, man, if that's not God, I don't know what is.
And you'll have this conversation with whoever you're having a conversation with, regardless of color. Like
regardless.
Okay. I mean, because that's the complaint, is that you got people that believe a certain way, but they never talk to white people. Like, it's like they only talk to us.
I've had this conversation with people, and that's the great thing about Uber. It's just like, this is my car, my conversation. I'm going to get you there safely. You want to have this dialogue. I'm going to warn you. Like, I may say some things you don't agree with, so don't hold it against me in my 5-star rating, because I'm doing everything right. I'm not speeding. I'm not running the red lights. So I've had this open dialogue, like, with just all different types of people. It goes well with some people. It goes bad with some people. But I don't love them no more, no less. I still respect them for being human. They have work to do, not me, as far as like being ignorant and not certain things. I had one writer the other day that, oh man, she got on me so bad about a vote. Like, I really don't hold like when people vote in their religion. Like, I don't hold people like to that. That's their personal preference. This lady was on me so tough about, did I vote for Maxine Waters? She was like, oh, where do you live? I was like, oh, I live in Inglewood. She was like, oh my God, don't tell me you voted for Maxine Waters. I was like, what are you talking about? She was like, that's your district person, and she's rotten to the core, and my friend was running against her. And I was like, she named her friend's name, and I was like, yeah, I don't have enough information to know like who your friend is. And she was like, I knew it. You voted for her. I said, first of all, if I don't know enough about it, I don't vote for what I don't know. I voted for officials in Inglewood that I know about and kind of went from there. But it was just like to the point where it was just like, this lady was on this vendetta of against Maxine Waters. And I'm like, Well, okay, she won, so there's nothing you can do about it.
Wow.
She was like, oh, it's just ridiculous. She's stealing from you guys. I'm like, look, I have not felt any effect from Maxine Waters being over our district. I said, matter of fact, she was at a basketball game the other night. Her son coaches at a high school at Crenshaw High. She was there. She supported the community. That's fine with me. All this other stuff you're talking about, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just so crazy on she was just hell-bent of this lady being a thief and rotten to the core, and probably ain't never seen her a day in her life. It was crazy. It was just like, it was insane.
Oh,
and then I got home and I thought about it, and I spoke to my wife about it, and I was like, yo, remember when we were talking about Maxine Waters and voting and this and that? She was like, yeah, she ran against this guy, blah, blah, blah. And she was so on it, I couldn't even remember, but I did end up voting for Maxine Waters, and I was like, but I was so wound up in her whatever, it was like, damn, I wish I could have told her, well, yeah, I voted for her, just to see where it went, but I wasn't sure. It was so much going on, and this was an Uber ride from Bel Air to like West Hollywood in the peak of traffic, so I'm in the car with this lady for like an hour and a half.
Wow.
It was just, it was insane.
So, do you feel, or are you aware of like, or how are white people doing things? And this is a broad stroke joint, but just to make sure, you know what I'm saying? If you have an answer, how are white people, like, let's take something like white flight, for instance, right? How is that information being transferred almost subconsciously to make it a movement? Like, and that white flight is not the only example. The example of using a term like sketchy instead of ghetto or non-white, or you see what I'm saying? Like these code words and this coded behavior. Have you witnessed how in essence this racism, this white supremacy becomes cultural? And have you been like invited into that in any indirect way or anything? Because obviously it's not just a Klan situation. It's something that it's like they're moving with an unspoken code. Like, are you aware of this, or this is just something that doesn't enter into your personal life or public life or anything?
I've never been like invited to it, but I have heard like certain terms used, like you said, like, oh, that area is still pretty sketchy, isn't it? And I already know like what they're on. I'm like, no, it's home to me, and the sketchiness, I know all about it. So, because when people ask me, they're like, oh my God, you're from Inglewood, you live in Inglewood, how is it? And I say, first of all, I'm going to be biased. I'm born and raised there, and I love it. And they're like, oh, okay, outside a part of that, like, how was it growing up there with the gangs and this and that? And I was like, yo, it was my childhood. I didn't know anything else. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But I could see where if you feed into it, then maybe there's a door open. But because of my response, I think because of my response, it's closed immediately.
Oh, so you messing up your own hookup? I see this.
Nah, I wouldn't call it a hookup, but I get what you're saying.
That is wild, man.
I know it's not a funny situation, but show up to the meeting with my children and see what happens.
Whoa! What's going on here?
Like, wait a minute, what's going on? Are you babysitting? Like, yeah, it's crazy. And that's another thing that's been a crazy experience, is just like me and my kids going somewhere. And I've actually, a white lady has asked me, oh, are you like babysitting? I'm like, no, these are my children. They're like, oh, and this is just going to Culver City to like Chick-fil-A.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's brutal out there, but it's,
So have you given a lot of thought on how you'll try and raise your children concerning like the two worlds that they're exposed to? I mean, I know your world is similar to their mother's world in culturally speaking, but from how it appears to be divided in the media moving forward, like are you just going to follow a formula that you've already seen, or you got something cooking, or that's going to come when it comes, or?
I definitely think of that like on a daily basis, and they're still pretty young, 6 and 4, but I instill things into them like their greatness, their color, their heritage. We're planning a trip to go to Cuba this year so they can see their heritage and what it's about and stuff like that, because they got to have knowledge of self. They have to. And they have to understand, like, yeah, dad is here, but you're probably not going to be looked at as dad is looked at, or get that pass or this or that with all the stuff that's going on. But I put little things in there so they can remember back, like, okay, this is what dad has been teaching and preparing us for. And it's just small steps, little things at a time. And, you know, prayerfully, and hopefully things change dramatically, but if they don't, they will be prepared.
Okay.
You know, it's pretty interesting because my nephews, they're older now, 28, 26, my niece 25, like they've been through it and they kind of see it. And my sister helps me out with a lot of things like that because she's been through it already with her children.
Yeah, I mean that's good to have, you know, a workable plan, because I mean I think that's complicated for parents of black children, period. It's like, you know, how do you teach self-respect when you're confronted with possible like state-sponsored like death or incarceration? You see what I'm saying? For standing firm. You know what I'm saying? Like, how much do you give? You know what I'm saying? Like, how much space is allowed, like, between, like, with contact with law enforcement, for instance, like, being firm for white people looks different. You see what I'm saying? Than being firm, right. You know what I'm saying, for non-white people. So it's like you're trying to teach this balance of, like, if you're doing the right thing, you have nothing to worry about, but somehow people that's doing the right thing still get murdered or incarcerated wrongly. You see what I'm saying? So it's a delicate balance for parents of black children, period. And I just I always wonder that, like, how are we raising these babies to deal with this climate? And I'm not saying that the climate is the same for all black children, but for those that are in climates, you know what I'm saying, that offer, you know, a history of violence, you know, physical or otherwise, you know what I'm saying? Like, how are we prepping? You know, so it was a general question indeed.
Yeah. I think example I could give you is at Heaven School, she was taught if there's someone they don't know, like when they're on a field trip or if someone, a stranger is around them, they kind of just like say stranger danger, like, you know, it's a little thing to where, oh, we don't know this person. So we're at the park one time for the thing, and the police are there, and they're kind of like giving stickers to little kids. And I explained to her, I said, just because someone has on their uniform doesn't mean they're a good person. She was like, well, what do you mean? I said, for example, when you go somewhere and you don't know somebody, you say stranger danger. So just because that badge is on there doesn't mean that they're, you know, good people. They're still strangers. She was like, she kind of got the concept. It wasn't too much, but it was just a little enough to let her know, like, just because they look like that don't mean that they're all the same or good or bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's complicated like, for everybody at this point, because it's like, yo, like, it used to be go to the police if you lost. Like, that was easy work. Like, you know what I'm saying? You tell his babies, like, if you get lost, go to the police. Like, that was easy.
Yeah, now it's just like, get the neighbor, the community. Like, we need the village more than ever right now.
This is true.
It's crazy. It's a trip, man. It's you know, things are, like I said, getting better, but it's a long way to go.
All right, man. Well, thanks for sharing.
Oh, definitely. It's always a pleasure just speaking things out loud and talking about it and reflecting and, you know, being grateful on growing up and the friendship and the diversity and culture and stuff like that. And being a part of something that is so powerful and loving to me. So I definitely appreciate all of it.